Hello, my name is Aurora, and I recently experienced something very awkward. However, before I go into that, I'd like to tell you about my closest friend, Mia, who is the best. She's cool, funny, attractive, and such a good girl, which makes my story much worse because I'm the bad guy here. Mia and I met in first grade and have been inseparable ever since. We ride to school together, eat lunch together, have sleepovers every weekend, and even travel on vacation together. Everything changed one day though. I always been in theatre club and I enjoy performing. I invited Mia to the opening night of our latest play and even got her a front row seat because she was my best friend and always came to cheer me on. After the show, we had a little party to celebrate and I invited Mia to come along as well. I introduced her to everyone because she was my best friend and soon everyone was adding her as a friend on social media and it made me so happy because to see how easily she got along with my drama friends. I planned to tell her who my infatuation was the next day after the rehearsals, but I didn't get the chance. Mia's behavior changed the next day. She couldn't stop smiling and appeared to be preoccupied. She informed me she had remained up late messaging with one of the boys from my play. No, I couldn't believe this was happening. She was texting my crush at that time. My heart felt it was cracking into little pieces, and I had to close my eyes firmly to keep the tears from flowing. Fortunately, I'm an actor, and she seemed to be so fall in love with him that she didn't even realize I was quiet and sad. I went off to the class and said I'd see her at lunch, but she was nowhere to be found by the time lunch arrived. When I finally saw her strolling across the playground with Luca, my crush, I felt horrible. So I went to the restroom and ate my lunch alone, crying uncontrollably. How would I be able to walk back on stage with Luca, knowing that he was now Mia's boyfriend and that I had liked him first? This wasn't right. Why would Mia do this to me? As we were getting ready for the show that night, I noticed Luca texting away on his phone. He seemed so happy. So I said hello, but he didn't even look up. For the next few days, I hardly saw Mia. We still cycled to school together, but all she did was talk about Luca nonstop, and I was furious. I wanted to scream at her and tell her that I liked him first. When I couldn't take any longer after the show, I texted Mia and told her the truth. I also stated that I can no longer be friends with her since it is too painful for me and that she had shattered our friendship. And the next morning, I cycled to school alone. It was the last night of the play, and I lost my best friend and crush. It was the worst week of my life. I managed to get through the performance, but afterwards, I said I was sick and couldn't stay for the last night party. Mia was standing there waiting for me as I moved towards my bicycle. She apologized profusely and said she would never have spoken to him if she had known how much I liked him. She declared that she had broken up with him and that no boy would ever come between us again. I began to cry. It wasn't even her fault. She had no idea. I told her it was fine. She may date Luca if she wants. And it didn't bother me because I recognized that friendship and seeing your friends happy were far more essential than having a crush on somebody. However, she had come to the same conclusion. As a result, we decided to forget about Luca and move on. We went out for ice cream and had the best night of our lives. My best friend had returned and no boy would ever come between us again. What are your thoughts on the story? Please leave your thoughts and stories in the comments area below and remember to like and subscribe to our channel. Hello, my name is Jasmine and I'm 13 years old. I'm one of those unfortunate people who wakes up at the drop of a hat. I have always thought being a light sleeper was the worst thing in the world until one night my parents had to go to an emergency conference in New York. So they left me at home alone for a week. They didn't seem to mind because my grandmother lives a few blocks away, so they knew I'd be fine the night before they were due back. I went out with my friends for milkshakes at her neighborhood diner. My friend's mother dropped me off at home, and I went straight to bed. I was so sleepy that I fell asleep quickly. I awoke thirsty and reached for my water bottle. That's when I first heard about it. When it sounded like someone was in my parents' room, I became concerned and worried that I slept through the night and that my parents had already returned. Was I really exhausted? It was 3 a.m. when I checked my phone. It was still the same night. My heart began to pound in my chest, and I attempted to remain calm. Tom, perhaps? Because a neighbor's cat had slipped through an open window, I sneaked approached my door and locked it just in case, then slid down onto my knees and pulled the key out so that I could peer through the locks. That's when I first noticed him. I froze when I saw a man digging through one of my mother's handbags. My heart felt like it was going to burst out of my chest, and my palms were sweating. I blinked, and when I looked again, he was heading straight towards me. Is he able to see me? As he tried my door handle, I backed away and covered my mouth to keep from screaming. I couldn't think what would have happened if I hadn't locked my door. I got a good look at him and knew right away that he was a face I never forget. I heard him walk away after kicking my door in frustration. I crept back to the lock and observed him making his way to my parents' room. This was my chance. It was now or never, so I reinserted the key into the lock and unlocked it as quietly as possible. I opened the door, hoping it wouldn't squeak, and crept towards the stairwell. I'm not sure why I was crawling as I made my way down the stairwell. On the third stair from the bottom, I forgot what happened. It ground beneath me as soon as my foot hit it, and I knew that was it. He was going to track me down or shoot me or something. The next thing I know, I was sprinting for the phone. I felt like my entire body was about to explode, and as I picked up the phone, my mind went blank. I couldn't even remember who to contact. I realized I had whispered into the phone for a few seconds, and the woman on the other end could hardly hear me. I crawled behind the sofa and cried silently for what it seemed like an eternity. I could hear his footsteps on the stairs and see him approaching me. He came closer and closer until, just as he got to the end of the sofa where my feet were, the front door opened and 3 cops dashed in. My pulse had been racing so fast that I hadn't even noticed them approaching from the street. I stood up, shivering and crying, and the female cop hugged me. I simply stood there crying in her arms while the other cops handcuffed the guy and marched him out to the car. He looked at me, and I never forget the way his eyes stabbed through me. The next day, it appeared in our local paper that he was fined for breaking in and entering, but he wasn't locked up or anything. It's fortunate that my parents keep all our things locked away in a safe, but that aspect almost worried me the most. The fact that he was still alive and well somewhere out there. What if he reappeared? His face still haunts me to this day. And I went to the grocery store yesterday and got some bread for my mother. It was a teeny tiny shop. So I went to the rear where they keep the bread and was playing on my phone when I fell over the basket on the ground. As I stood up, I observed a familiar-looking man stuffing his backpack. Then it hit me. He was stealing. I let out a gasp and he bolted. I knew why he looked so familiar as soon as our eyes locked. It was him, the thief from 2 years ago. He smirked at me and started grabbing items from the shelf and stuffing them into his bag. I froze again, but this time not in terror. I grabbed a can of spaghetti hoops and flung it right at him. He tripped over a stack of toilet paper, scattering them all over the store. I yelled, and the store clerk and security guard dashed over. They discovered his stolen stuff in his suitcase and alerted the cops. I just stood there, confidently beaming. I didn't want the burglar to get away the second time, so I wanted to make sure he was arrested once and for all. Share their thoughts and opinions in the comments box below, and don't forget to like and subscribe to our channel. Bye!
David's secret device. It started on such a great night. I was playing my favorite game and laughing with my friends online. It was the hardest. I laughed forever. I've been struggling in school lately, so I've been stressed out for weeks. But I had just pulled my grades back up to passing. I just needed to do well on my next text, and the year would be over. But all that had melted away, and I was so happy until, I hope you study well for big test tomorrow. To be honest, Abraham Lincoln remembers counts at half your grade. Yes, Mom. I definitely studied. I hadn't studied at all. I had totally forgotten about this text. I was panicking, and I felt bad that I lied to my mom too. But I couldn't tell her. She would kill me. Don't look so worried, you study. I'm sure you'll be fine. Good night, Noah. How could it be a good night? What I'm going to do? I'm in so much trouble. I'm going to fail this year. I'll be left back. Maybe David's working on something I can use. Hi, David. What are you working on? I just finished this fascinating new device. What does it do? It's a microchip that you place in your ear and it transmits people's thoughts, allowing you to read their minds. I call it the mind reader with 2 patents pending. Don't tell anyone, I haven't written it yet. And I thought it's exactly what I need. I just put that in my ear during the test and I'll read the answer from the smartest kids' minds. It was a perfect plan. It still has some problems, but it works. I originally made it for my ex-wife, but I found that there's just some knowledge one shouldn't attain. I decided to distract him so I could take it. That's cool. What else are you working on? Oh, well, I also invented cheese. This is an edible. I haven't exactly found an application for it, but science is a progress. When he turned his back, I snapped the chip. All my prayers were answered. The next day in class, I was really nervous. I had barely slept all night. What were the problems David was talking about? I saw how nervous you were last night. You do fine. You just have to put the work in and the grades will come. Here's a piece of scratch paper. It always helps you write things out first. My mom said. I felt really bad lying to my mom, but as long as I got the grade, she wouldn't know. Okay class, it's time to take the honest Abraham Lincoln test. Remember to be honest, they wouldn't stand for cheating and we take cheating very seriously as a school. Now begin, the teacher said. I have to put the chip in quickly. I couldn't risk getting caught. As soon as I did, I was able to focus on students' thoughts. Right away, I could hear a little bit of rumbling of the other kids' thoughts at the same time. But it was working. I started with Mary because she was modest in the class. Question 1. What number present was Lincoln? 16. I thought this was perfect. The only problem was as time went on, the rumbling of all the other voices in the background was getting louder and louder. It was getting hard to concentrate, but I was still able to make out Mary. Luckily, we were on the last question. It was getting maddening. It was so loud. I could barely make out Mary's final answer. 13th president. I got the final answer. All I had to do now was take this chip out my ear and hand it in my test. But when I went to check the chip out, it wouldn't budge. I was panicking. The harder I pulled, the more it hurt that I was going to stay like this. The voices of the other kids were just getting louder. John, I never finished this text. There's backside. Barry Lintold. I have to get out of here quickly. I kept hearing everyone's thoughts. I didn't have to get this chip out. I have no idea what's going on. I was so disoriented. Nora grabbed me and dragged me down the hall. She brought me back to the classroom where my mom was, who looked really mad. I can't believe Heather would do this. Oh my God, I'm going to lose my job. What am I going to do? Nora explained that she knew I had cheated, and she thought when my mom came in and whispered in my ear, she helped me and that the scratch paper she gave me was an answer key. Nora said I had to take the test again right now in the room, and if I couldn't get the same test results, she would know that we had cheated, and she would tell the superintendent that my mom would be fired. I knew I couldn't do it. I would fail, and my mom would get fired. I felt horrible. I hadn't studied and kept being interrupted by their thoughts. I was definitely going to lose my mother her job. Noah, you failed. Clearly, you cheated. I'm sorry, Ether. I have to call the superintendent, the teacher said. My mother replies, Oh no, this job is my life. Thinking quickly, I put the chip in Nora's hair and explained what had happened. And because she could read my mind, she believed me. I'm very sorry, Heather. I should have trusted you. Noah, it was very brave of you to be honest. So in the spirit of honest, Abe, I will give you extra credit and you will pass. As Lincoln would say, honesty the best policy. Maybe honesty isn't always the best policy at now.